Merry Meet and welcome back to the series on the flow of the Rite. Something that I like to address before we get into anything specifically about the flow of a rite is, what is ritual? Because a rite, the flow of the rite, the entirety of it is a ritual. It's a pattern. It's a ceremony. So let's think about what that might be. What does the word mean to you? What came to your mind first when I mentioned, let's talk about ritual? What does ritual mean to you? I've got a dry definition, but it came out of the dictionary, and that is an act or series of acts regularly repeated in a precise format, the established form for a ceremony, the way things are done. Ceremony, if you look that up, because it's a very similar word, is an act or series of acts performed according to a traditional form. So it's a given. Traditional in our sense, especially as solitaries, doesn't have to mean traditional because it's what someone else did. It's what we decide our personal tradition is, what we do in a repeated pattern. One of my favorite definitions of ritual. I've collected definitions of ritual over the years, and here's one of my favorites. It's a series of actions undertaken which involve symbolic words, icons, or movements that trigger shifts in the emotional, energetic, and spiritual experiences of the practitioner. Now, this explanation I like because it explains why we can be very different in thought or belief, and we can be together in ritual, and it's equally powerful for both of us. There are certain patterns and symbols, movements and flows that we each respect and experience within the flow of a rite. One of the interesting things about the flow of the rite, those actions that we perform, is that the result of it is greater than those parts. Something happens which is not only the sum of everything we do with intent, but what it becomes, which is beyond and greater than that. We can experience that in the smallest, most informal of rituals, of repeated actions and patterns and icons and symbols and energies. Or we can experience it within something that's rather long and involved. In the end, what happens is much more than the sum of all the things we do, which leads up to that. Another favorite quote of mine. This came from a book called Prime Chaos by Phil Hine. A magic ritual is more than the sum of its parts. So in keeping with what we've just talked about, ritual has elements of performance and its own psychology, yet it would be a mistake to consider ritual merely psychodrama. Ritual can be broken down into the arrangement of sensory cues, voice techniques, gestures, visualization, movement, symbolism, role shifting, and trance induction. It's a lot of things that can happen in the flow of the rite. He goes on to continue, yet it's more than any of this. Rituals, here's my favorite part of what he wrote, rituals, when performed, create an atmosphere, a space, in which something mysterious and wonderful may happen. We plot and we plan our way through the rituals we create, small and large, and the best rituals, they're the ones when something happens that wasn't part of our plot and our plan, the something which is greater than the parts. I found something on a website about Taoism, about ritual, because I guess there's been some debate in some circles that practice forms of Taoism on what a ritual is, or whether the practitioner even should do a ritual. And the question that was posed was, and I think it applies to us too, why do we need to practice any rituals at all? Aren't rituals about dogma? And isn't dogma the opposite of the Tao, which is all about freedom? I think that's an important quote to mention in this series, because a lot of you are not formal practitioners, and that's whether you're covened or whether you're solitary. And one of the things you struggle is it feels like something very prescribed to be told you have to go through a certain ritual or procedure in order to get something done, and it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like it's boxed you in and you're pushing back against it. I liked the answer that I found on that website, and it was freedom and discipline are two sides of the same coin. Self-discipline, training and control of oneself and one's conduct for personal improvement. The ability to control your behavior in order to achieve certain goals. Self-discipline is not self-denial, but rather establishing a pattern within which you can learn, have a shift in awareness, and return to learn again and again. You carry yourself along on your own tide. It goes right in with my thoughts about the flow of the Rite. If we are practicing in a repeating pattern, we create a freedom in a sense. We've got this flow going that we do almost at ease because we will have done it so many times. Not really knowing what will come of it, we create a place for mystery, for surprise, for the greater thing that's larger than the sum of those parts, as I've mentioned before. And there's a lot of power in then noticing anything which feels different. When you do something over and over again the same way, any experience which is new, which is different, catches your attention, and you can become very involved in it within the structure of what you created, which is a given, which brings you into and out of that opportunity. Ritual can also be seen as the creation of a temporary autonomous zone. Now, if you go off and look up what autonomous zone means, the phrase, you'll see a lot of descriptions of it that don't seem to apply to what I'm about to say. But one of the many explanations of what an autonomous zone is the place of total freedom. It's a place that's outside of expected, planned, controlled. It's what we do within the structure of permanence that is something that can become very powerful. It's a place outside of expected and regulated control. The Urban Dictionary calls it a liberated space. But the important thing is, it is a construct. We've set about creating it. We have said, I will do this, I will make this, I am going to cause something to happen. We may not always know what the something is, but we have created this autonomous zone within which something will happen. I also like that the creation of an autonomous zone is often called the pleasure of disappearance. Really speaks to the letting go and moving into the energy of the Rite. That's the place you hear described, and I will often describe it as outside of time and place. It's a formal structure. Yes, there's no doubt about that. It's intentionally created in a repeating pattern. But the creation of it's a bit of a paradox, and I think sometimes we only get it when we've done it enough that we experience it. The pattern we create is to intentionally create a place free of pattern, a place of all possibility. The beginner focuses on the pattern of ritual creation. There are a lot of questions about why to go to all that trouble. And then there'll become that moment inside that created environment when something outside of what you expected happens, or some more powerful experience of what you expected happens. Something that you may have thought of as a possibility becomes a living reality within that construct. As Phil Hine wrote, it's an atmosphere, a space within which something mysterious may well happen. And the point is, we set it intentionally to be that. Another aspect of ritual and why we do it, which goes back to one of the traditional dictionary descriptions of ritual, is it is a sacred action performed to improve not only our condition in the universe, not only our condition in the universe, but the universe itself. This experience can be larger than us. It often is, to my experience. What we can generate and offer up within that paradox of the confined space of total freedom is an important part of what ritual can be. Ritual also has an extremely important psychological component, and it's why I can be in ritual side by side with those who do not have the same spiritual beliefs as I do, and we can still get to a beautiful place together. Rituals engage the subconscious, the right brain. And you can do some reading on right brain and left brain if you're not familiar with that. Generally, the day-to-day things that we do to exist, what we do to function at the thought level, is left brain, the conscious mind. The thing about our right brain is it doesn't communicate with language. That's left brain. And when we want to get to the level of conversation and deep immersion in our right brain, the place of our unconscious, which is indeed a great part of where we go during our ritual, we need to occupy the left brain. We need to keep it busy. We need it to be recognizing again the pattern of what we're doing. It's occupied. That's where the construct happens. And where the freedom from all rules and expectations and construct happen is when that left brain is occupied, right brain just flies. And the freedom experienced by having the right brain come into control of what's happening is exhilarating, and without fail again is that place of possibility. The conscious mind, the left brain, has expectations. The unconscious mind, the right brain, it waits to see what will occur and fully immerses itself in the experience because it doesn't have expectations. Definitely, in a sacred sense, going with the flow. An important part of the psychological study of what ritual is in a paragraph I've written here. Ritual is an intimate experience where we each determine which symbols speak to us. Mixed in with the right and left brain is the power of the psychic mind. Let's talk about that just a little bit. Ritual is an intimate experience where we each react to certain symbols. They speak to that subconscious mind, our right brain. They mean something that could be, and often is, completely outside of whatever their mundane representation is. It's why ritual can be different for each of us, why we need to develop our own way, because we are learning what symbols speak to us, indeed what they mean at that subconscious level. We work with these symbols, the steps of our right and the actual symbols within our right, because we want to connect to what they mean at the level of our own unconscious. That's the part of the brain that communicates without words. It doesn't perceive through logic or the tangible aspects of the five senses. It works only from the place of instinct and emotion. That's the place our rituals take us. The power of repetitive ritual is we know the flow of the right. We know what the symbols used in it mean for us at the deep level. We engage the right brain. We engage the psychic brain. We're working at a level that does not require words, and isn't it a paradox? We use words to create the place we need to be that is a place of no words. Again, experiencing it makes that ring true for you. The more we practice our particular ritual form, the deeper we go. The power of our symbols grow, and our ability to slip into that right brain, to that subconscious world of instinct and emotion grows and grows. The only true responsibility we have to our right as a solitary is that everything that we do for a purpose. We do to engage the left brain And we do it to create the freedom for our unconscious to rise to the surface, to meet whatever presents itself or whatever we call to us. We end up knowing intimately the pattern of the rituals that we create for ourselves, no matter how simple or complex. I dare say, even beyond the power of those rituals, creating the place for our psychic brain, our psychic mind to kick in, the universe recognizes that pattern because it will be unlike any other pattern, any other construct. For those of us who explore this as our spiritual expression, our way of generating the conduit between us and the gods, I also dare say our gods recognize the pattern that we are, and we are within our rites. The paradox of ritual. Creating a set of givens which then in turn releases all given and every expectation. Perhaps if you're taking this series as a serious student of ritual, you might think about what I said that you agree and don't agree with. What does ritual feel like to you? It is more important what it feels like to you than any of the dictionary definitions or literary quotes that I used. Capture your thoughts on what ritual might be. It's a good place to start from. I wish you mirth and reverence. Merry part.